I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Jonny Smith.
And this is Smith and Sniff, a podcast in which two friends talk about cars, and this week, wormholes.
In a previous podcast, I've mentioned my dislike for the vocoder. And also, is it autocorrect or auto-tune singing?
Autocorrect.
I can't remember.
I mean, it basically is autocorrect, isn't it? But yeah.
Is it auto-tune, shitty singing techniques? I am convinced now that should be the industry term for those faux exhaust notes that we have now, the synthesized engine that tries to hide the real sound of the exhaust. It's vehicular vocoding, is it not?
It is, yeah. I blame Cher.
Let's blame Cher anyway. But I think latterly, Bieber's done some appalling mess. There's a couple of. Drake. I know that he's apparently quite a talented rapper and stuff, and does wear an awful lot of mountaineering clothes indoors. But
yes,
there's no doubt. I've genuinely, I've never heard.
He's got a far-reaching deal with Millets, I think.
Oh, I have never ever heard him sing without auto-tuning, without vocoding. So for all I know, he could have a really high voice like this, couldn't he? And he's just synthesized it out. I got no idea. But
yeah,
so
I think it's odd when it's applied, because I know what you mean. I always think I associate it with masking 1,000 sins of people who can't quite hold a tune.
Of course.
But it seems to me it gets used now on people who, from their previous work, full well can actually sing very well.
Yeah.
Which seems odd, because it's now become a thing. It's just a stylistic thing rather than a sort of way. And I mean, obviously Cher can sing. That was a stylistic thing. And that was when the technology was a bit, well, it had been around for years, hasn't it? The vocoder's been around for a long time, but being able to do it with a computer.
But vocoder abuse hasn't been around for too long.
Yeah, the technology also does, the auto-tune stuff exists, in fact, to make people seem like they can sing better. I know someone who worked on a big live show that Jennifer Lopez performed at, and she sang live, but her vocals were routed through a computer that was running Pro Tools, the industry standard music sort of manipulation software. I think it's still industry standard. I don't know. Someone will tell us. But it was at the time. This is a few years ago. And they were running something like 8 channels of Pro Tools just to do live correction on her voice, basically.
Because it had to do it within a split second of...
Well, I guess so. I mean, that's pretty mind-boggling that it can do that. But
yeah, it is.
I wonder whether it was also sort of multi-tracking and stuff, so give her voice a bit more, body in parts of the
but it's sort of living a lie, though, isn't it? Because the reason why I brought this up immediately is because I've been in the garden quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 days. And I actually had 2 days without my phone. I got my children to hide my phone. And in all seriousness, it's one of the best things that I've ever done for my mental health. However, I kept hearing this, what I thought to be a fruity car on kickdown going past the house, and I ran to the garden wall to see if there's like a gateway that I can see it go by, and it was always an Audi SQ5, and I'm pretty sure it's a diesel. Is it a diesel? I think it's a diesel.
I think there was a time, possibly not now, should check this maybe, but there was a time when you could get a petrol one as well. But there definitely was a diesel when it came out originally.
Yeah, and
it has got synthos.
It's got a vehicular vocoder on it, so it sounds half decent. But then I was fooled into it, and every time I ran over to that wall for no fucking good reason. Really annoyed about it. So there's that. And is it a bit like, if you can genuinely sing, let's take Jennifer Lopez, for example. If you can genuinely sing, but you choose to have your voice kind of triple-checked or I don't know, synthesised and altered in some way, is that like a really good racing driver just choosing to drive badly one day just because it just mixes things up a little bit?
Or like a really good e-sports racing driver, but just choosing to put it on the setting where the computer does it all for you?
Oh, yeah. Or automatic and no crashing mode.
Or it's like deciding to use one of those auto blip on the downshift functions.
Oh, yeah.
which all sorts of cars have now, don't they?
They do.
The GR Yaris has got it. Not a very good one, actually. I discovered in the GR Yaris, not worth bothering with at all. But it always feels like cheating, no matter what.
Yeah, the 911, the 992 I drove the other day did.
Yeah. And I think the Porsche one, from my memory, I experienced that on a Boxster, and it's really good. Like, it is uncanny.
It is good.
It second guesses. And Minis, I've driven it on a Mini where I thought it was really good. But it feels like cheating.
Of course it feels like cheating. It's self-congratulatory driving, isn't it? It's hey, I'm really good.
Mind you,
hey, you're so good.
Let me ask you this: how is your heel and towing these days? Because mine's shockingly shit. Because I don't do it very much anymore.
Do you know what? When I drove a Spiker last week, I heeled and towed the whole time in it because it had a pedal box to die for.
Oh.
And it was a great pedal box, and I had slightly bigger shoes than I should have had for that kind of car.
Yeah.
And I found myself really dialing in the heeling and towing, which I didn't mention when I was videoing it because I thought I'd sound like a complete O-ring. But
yeah, you'd sound like a bit of a Tillerman.
Yes, and I didn't want that because that's not me. But it was really satisfying. I've found some of the least suspecting cars have the best position pedals for myself for heeling and towing.
Yeah.
And one of them is the current Transit van.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Really brilliant. I almost just want to buy the pendulum setup, which is probably about 60 quid plus VAT from Folds, and I just put it in another car. It was brilliant. I think the Toyota Hilux is really good as well. Yeah,
Dacia Sandero is surprisingly...
Is that good?
Yeah. And it's a bit of a shame because the first Sandero I ever drove, which is absolutely basic old shape one, had a naturally aspirated engine, so it was quite blippy. It's good.
Yeah.
I drove the new one a few weeks ago, and it's still got quite good pedals for heel and towing, but the throttle response is a bit softer because it's turbot and a 3-cylinder and everything. So it's still surprisingly good. I can't remember what it was. I drove something else. I know what you mean. Something really ordinary, where I found myself just doing needless down changes just because you could. Yeah. It's that winning combination of the pedals in the right position. The accelerator is just where you want it under sort of moderate to hard braking, and it's got quite good throttle response, not too sharp but not too soft, and you can just you just get your eye in with it, and it's a rare thing. But that's it. I certainly can't do it in my Land Rover because you'd have to wear wellies, and even then it's quite a stretch.
I regularly drive EVs left foot braking.
Do you?
Yeah, if I'm going a bit quicker, I need to get on it. Yeah, and I tend to set myself a task of like, you're going to do the next 50 miles left foot braking only, and it's really good for training the other side of your brain. Yeah, because you have to properly focus. Yeah, and it turns a dull journey into a slightly less dull journey. Yeah. So
I've got to do some track driving in a couple of weeks or so.
I'm sorry you used the wrong terminology there, Rich. It's track work.
Track work, of course.
Yes, of course.
I've been docked 2 Helmsman points for not using. Got a bit of track work coming up.
Track work.
Yeah, I'm driving a manual transmission car, which from memory has good pedal placement. On a track, and I'm a bit worried I'm going to have to get my eye in pronto on the old heel and toe.
Oh, you'll be good.
It's a satisfying thing to get right, but I feel so out of practice. It's like my ankles have seized up. Well, actually, my ankles have seized up. I've got a bad foot at the moment. So.
Have you?
Yeah.
You need to do some. I bet yoga is quite good for the heel and toe practice.
Yeah,
just getting the ankle ball more activated.
Maybe this is a business idea.
Racing drivers sort of
racing driver yoga studio where you just concentrate on.
I can imagine that. Imagine having a Zoom yoga call with Richard Meaden, for example, who's just gonna work me through all the optimum ankle movements for driving, for getting on it properly on a track. It could help, couldn't it? It's not the stupidest thing we've ever thought of.
No, that's true.
Is it?
Well, I don't know.
No.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, well, why not? I mean, Helmsman.
I know, why not? Listen, guys.
Helmsman's yoga is
Helmsman's yoga. It's like Hellman's mayonnaise. Hellman's mayonnaise. Let's not go there.
Isn't that what you get when you've been pushing a car so hard that the head gasket goes?
Oh, that's what it is. Exactly. Helmsman's mayonnaise.
I've looked under your oil filler and I'm afraid you've got some Helmsman's mayonnaise there.
Oh, you've completely... You've taken it to the Nürburgring without doing any formal checks on the car.
It was actually it was minimum on the dipstick to start with, you clot.
Helmsman's mayonnaise. I love that. That's brilliant.
What will we say? Oh, yeah, about those sound fake auto-tune exhaust things, though. Because mostly they're just on the inside, aren't they? I guess that Audi's maybe doing something on the outside as well, but mostly but a lot of cars that...
X5M, X6M, they have massive outside amplifiers by the tailpipes.
Do they?
Yeah. Because you can hear it. If you're down by the back of the car, it actually has an outdoor speaker, has a waterproof.
Jesus, I've never looked.
I know,
I can't get close
all
to
that
those
effort
cars without gagging, so I haven't bothered. But
but this is it all has to end, doesn't it? Because it's the equivalent of Instagram filtering your face so it looks nothing like your face.
But does it? Are we not, in fact,
though?
on the verge of this becoming a much bigger thing because a lot of electric cars will start to... Well, they already do make noises, don't they? They all do.
They can, yeah. They synthesise noises for mandatory pedestrian safety and all that jazz. But I think the joy of an electric car is the lack of noise. Often, it's
I mean,
it can ramp up the engagement, the driving engagement. I know, don't get me wrong, I don't want to knock pedestrians down. I get that below 35 or whatever it is mandatory. But
I turned off the internal, you can, in the I-Pace, you can have faux sounds coming through the speakers that try to replicate the engine things. I turned all that off straight away. It's very clever how they've done it, but I actually, like you say,
you just don't want
the quiet of an electric car is part of the appeal. So,
yeah.
Hey, speaking of noises, you must be familiar with the noise that electric or semi-electric Kias make in reverse. Did your Seoul do it?
Oh, yeah.
Bing,
bow,
bing,
bow,
bing.
Bow. So, because I was talking to a neighbour once and I left it in reverse for the whole conversation.
Oh, yeah.
You could see one of their eyes was sort of looking around like, what is that?
Are the aliens coming? One of our neighbours has had a Nero hybrid for a while now. Perfectly decent car, but of course, bing, bing, bing whenever she backs it up. Well, one of our other neighbours has just bought one as well, and now,
oh no,
half of the day it feels like there's bing, bing, bing,
being chased
outside.
by polite reversing.
Yeah,
it's bobbins, isn't it?
And there's no way of turning it off, I think, because it's for safety reasons. So, yeah, it's a bit. It's not fully irritating, it's just a little bit irritating, which in some ways is worse.
I think it's worse because I sweat the small stuff, but then that's definitely me. It's funny, isn't it? Because I had someone contact me, a chap called Graham, after watching my Nissan Cedric taxi video, who said, I might have something you might be interested in. Ages ago, I bought a Japanese import 350Z Nissan, and it had a strange reversing warning on it, which is a Japanese woman pretty much just asking, please get out the way because I'm coming backwards. And he said when he sold the car, he took it off because he thought it was fascinating, and he's kept the module, and he said, do you fancy it for the taxi? I'm like, hell yeah. He gave me a recording of it, and it's really cool. So I'm like,
it's in Japanese, presumably.
Yes, it's just a very, very polite lady. In fact, I don't know if I can find it on my phone to play, but it's just a little tiny speaker. And
hey, hang on, but does this mean you're going to have to get your auto electrician guy to wire it in on that side of things?
Oh shit!
Backref to last week's episode for people who don't know. I say this because I've had more than one message from people who've discovered this podcast, but then because of the way it gets organised in Apple Podcasts and other podcast listening
delivery services,
it sort of wants you to start at the end and go backwards. So I've had a few people saying, listen to, I sort of, they cottoned onto it at like episode 48 or something, and then they've just worked backwards to episode 1 or episode 0, because there's one of those for cockeyed.
Oh yeah, there is, because we got our numbers mixed up.
Yeah, the last episode was episode 50, and we never mentioned it. And then I thought, well, actually, it's not episode 50 because of episode 0, which has really fucked us up. So it doesn't matter anyway. Yeah, you'll have to get.
That's our half century episode.
Yeah, well, actually,
half Toyota century.
I believe this episode is near as damn it our 1 year anniversary. I think we put the first.
The first podcast out.
I think we put episode 0 out on, if memory serves, because I looked this up the other day. I think we put it out on the 11th of
Bloody
April.
Hell, you might be right.
Which was a Saturday. We put episode 0 out, and then I think we put the first proper one out a couple of days later.
We did do a trial, didn't we?
Yeah, and this goes live on the 12th. So, this is in fact our 1 year. We've been doing this shite for 1 year, so.
But what's weird is how long have we been doing people who are listening to this who are quite new, how long had we been doing the videos?
A couple of years, maybe?
At least. I think we might have done 3 years worth of videos before we stopped because of the pandemic. And I think we did I worked out, didn't we go to Pebble Beach in 2011?
Yes.
So we did our first prototype video on your then very new iPhone. Was it an iPhone 3? Can't remember.
Maybe.
In 2011 on that golf cart that we have some footage somewhere of. That was our first Smith and Sniff, really.
Yeah. Well, that was like the sort of scratty development mule that would never see light of day.
And it was. No.
Although we might put some of the footage up on the Patreon or something at some point. I have got some of the footage, or not from the main camera though, annoyingly. But that was the sort of scrubby engineering prototype to see if everything fitted together.
That's right.
Approximately. And then there was a big gap. But so anyway, it's 1 year since whatever. Oh, I know what I want to talk about. I had a bit of a wormhole. Every year I fall down a Dukes of Hazzard wormhole.
But that was way less than a year ago.
No, I didn't. It's okay. I did.
Oh, okay.
It was fine. The Dukes of Hazzard wormhole is. It's like Flying Ant Day. I don't know exactly when it'll happen, but it's usually sort of broadly a year apart. So it hasn't been a year yet. That's
Flying Ant Day.
Flant Day. Flant Day always. When is it though? I can never remember it. That's the thing, you never remember, but it just happens.
I don't think
ants. Oh bloody hell! It's Flying
ants
Ant
don't
Day.
diarise it. I think it's down to the perfect humidity and ambient temperature.
I think
that's how they know.
Is it not?
They don't go. No, it's not like it's May the 14th. Let's rock and roll. Is it? I don't know. Is it like a really important car show where they're all struggling to get their whips ready? They're like, quick! I want better wings than the other guy. I want to get my landing gear sorted because we're all flying tomorrow. It's not. I don't know if it's like. It's not a set date.
No. But it's approximately
it's conditions.
Yeah.
It's conditions, just like a shuttle launch.
Yeah. Well, you think that Flying Ant Day sometimes is about to happen and then gets put off because of the weather.
Of course it does, because wind slightly changes or the temperature dips and they're like, we can't fly so well in this, so I'm out. Let's just stay in tonight and we'll see about tomorrow.
Yeah. Maybe it's all coordinated by the popular TV personality Flant Flanstead, who's
Flant Flanstead?
Flant Flanstead.
You mean Ant Hanstead?
Mike Brewer, yeah. Well, there's Ant Hanstead. We know who he is. He can't fly. Flant Hanstead or Flant Flanstead can fly and is more irritating because of it, but only comes out once a year.
Only once a year?
Yeah.
It's like the groundhog.
Yeah. Well, he's a flant, isn't he? So
he's a flant.
Anyway,
I've never heard of Flant as the flying ant.
You've not?
No, I've never heard it described like that.
Flying.
Do you know what? Actually, you've reminded me. Ant-Man and Wasp, I think, is the only Marvel film that I entertain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the only one that I think is worth watching.
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Is it?
And there's a cool 70s custom van in it with musical horns.
Oh,
but
yes, because Ant-Man there's the van in other Ant-Man appearances, I think, isn't there? It's
Probably
the Ant-Man van. The Ant van.
You've got the guy with, and you've got Michael Douglas in it.
Yes,
well, playing a very old man, unsurprisingly.
Playing Colonel Sanders off the KFC packets.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes,
for some reason, but it's never mentioned. Yeah. Anyway, yes. So no, I didn't fall down the Dukes of Hazzard wormhole last week, but I did. There was a listener, Richard Shepherd, sent me a link to a YouTube channel, and his email just said, "Have fun in the wormhole."
Oh gosh!
So in a way, Richard Shepherd's a bit of a bastard, because that's exactly what happened. My Easter weekend was consumed watching this YouTube channel, which is all about Knight Rider, but it's mental. It's the video that he sent me, which was a sort of gateway drug to watching many more of their videos. They're called Knight Rider Historians on YouTube. That's the channel. I know.
What do you mean a Knight Rider historian?
No, it's better than that, because they're sort of graphic. That they
what?
Have. Yeah, you have a graphic. Well, you have a graphic for your YouTube channel. I mean, what self-respecting YouTube
I
channel
thought you meant they are graphic. As
no,
they use the C word whenever they're describing Michael Knight. Oh yeah, the bloke with the leather jacket. What an absolute.
The Knight Rider historians actually hate Knight Rider and are constantly bad-mouthing Michael Knight. No, they love Knight Rider, and so the video that he sent me was entitled "Does Super Pursuit Mode Kit Still Exist?" Now you remember this, that in the later series of Knight Rider, Kit had this super pursuit mode where then it always showed it's like the nose of the car extending and little winglets coming out of the wings, and the back sort of rose up, and these rocket engines and all sorts of shit, so it could go ultra fast. I
don't remember that.
Well, you should.
Does it just speeded up footage?
Oh, of course it was. Yeah, but there was.
Yes,
but then the whole
checking.
transformation scene. They built two. I know this now. They built two cars. One was just a shell which they could do close-ups of all of these bits of the car transforming. So it was a shell that had hydraulics built into it to do all the sort of, bits coming out and extending and all looking quite cool. And then they had a driving stunt car which was already in the transformed mode. And this whole video is about whether and bear in mind, it's not just, they don't just go, do they still exist? Yeah, they do. No, they don't. It's not that. It's not as simple as that. It's like 10 minutes or something of them talking through forensic analysis of these cars and which episodes they appeared in. The fact that one of them was built on another stunt car that had already featured in earlier series, and how they identified that. It's mind-boggling. They've got access to sort of like call sheets and inventories from the studio, so they can cross-ref all the different cars and figure out which was which. And it's genuinely impressive and slightly troubling all at the same time. So
would you own a movie car? As in, because I had this conversation quite recently with my children, because my lad really loves Back to the Future, and my daughter's more into Dukes of Hazzard. Mm-hmm. They said to me, and they both really like Ghostbusters, they said, "Daddy, if you had to own one of the proper film cars, as in, I guess, a replica, which one would it be?" And it was DeLorean, Back to the Future in all of the time machine regalia, Dukes of Hazzard, General Lee, Ecto-1 or Knight Rider. They said, which one would it be? And I sat there for ages and we all mulled it over like a very serious family conversation. Even my wife got involved and went, ooh. And I think the majority vote went to the DeLorean in the end, but I nearly went DeLorean, because I would own a DeLorean, genuinely. Probably not a time machine one. I went with Ecto-1.
Ecto-1 or that Rover 75 hearse painted up like Ecto-1?
Well, I mean, listen, that's another story. Because I've already got a Charger, I would probably not want another Charger, although I do like the General Lee, and I do like when people see it, they largely grin and smile, unless they find it racist, in which case they won't. But the thing about Ecto 1 is rarer than all the other cars, but you can fit a lot more people in it. You've got a very good, impressive onboard PA system on the roof with scrolling screens and everything, which are a lot cheaper to achieve nowadays, whereas off of the 80s they were actually quite expensive. So I went with Ecto 1, and I thought I would genuinely own an Ecto 1 Meteor ambulance if I could. What about you? I'll ask the same question to you.
Well, you see, it sort of bugs me when people default to making cars look like the movie ones. It's like, if you've got a DeLorean, just enjoy it as a DeLorean. Why do you need to make it look like a Back to the Future car? And likewise with the Chargers, I much prefer your Charger to someone who's carefully made a General Lee replica. But if it's an actual General Lee prop car that was used in the show, that's a bit different. And they did. Have we talked before of that story about how after the show was cancelled, Warner Brothers sold a load of the old stunt cars to basically an enthusiast club. Well, basically an enthusiast. They invited him out to California because he'd been negotiating with them to buy a load of spares that they didn't need anymore for Dodge Chargers. Yeah. And then they kind of ambushed him when he was there and went, hey, just come and have a look at this. And then took him to this lot where there were like a dozen, I think, old stunt cars, largely quite fucked. And he had to form a limited company to buy them off the studio for like $1 a piece or something. And then he distributed them amongst hardcore members of the Charger.
You General Lee drug dealer.
I know. And but then there was a website, and it seems to have disappeared because I used to always visit it on my wormhole journey. But where there was a guy detailing the state of the genuine General Lee stunt car that he got from this haul from Warner Brothers backlot, and it was an absolute crock of bits of all sorts of other cars, because what was the General Lee was a 68, is that right?
69,
beg your pardon. But they were getting so desperate for Chargers that they were buying 68s and 70s and then doctoring them to look correct.
Yeah, exactly. They were just 68s like mine with the circular rear lights. They were just hacking them out and putting the long bar lights in. Yeah. Putting the front grille on, which is interchangeable, and then that Nerf bar, which was unique to the Lee. But they were doing that. But of course, like, as you know, these cars were 10 years old, 12 years old. They weren't classic.
No.
And they weren't revered in the way that they are now. So although it's hurtful to see these Chargers being just chucked around and binned, they weren't really...
That's you put it like
very
that.
Old.
No, because so it's a 69, and the show started in the late 70s, didn't it? So
in 79, January 79 was the pilot episode. Yeah,
I mean, so that now would be, sake of argument, in a 2009 car, which doesn't feel very old at all, does it? It's like,
well, let's say 2009 Ford Focus ST. It wouldn't be an RS. Let's say it was a Focus ST.
I was thinking a Mercedes C63, because it's a bit of a muscle car. Yeah. I mean, not for the Dukes of Hazzard. I don't think they'd be ragging around Georgia in a C63. But
I mean, it would be quite cool. But would it be a pop bang map S3 Audi?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if it was in the US and it was a US car, I mean, it would just be a modern Challenger, wouldn't it? That's been around forever, that car.
Yeah.
Or a 300C with a Hemi. Or something like that. I mean,
it wouldn't have people up in arms.
No, or the four-door Charger, that's been around since then, hasn't it? I think so.
Yeah, and I don't like it. So
that's why I didn't mention it at first. I thought it would anger you up again, but there's
just jump it all you like.
Or what else? I mean, Mustang. You could have one of the sort of, but like a 2-generation old Mustang. I mean, that sort of feels like you just go, that's a bit of a.
Well, that's why it's a wonder that the car became so iconic.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly that reason. I think to myself, it would have been 10, 11, 12 years old when that... It would have been 12 years old when that show hit its proper peak.
Yeah.
Like 1981, let's say.
So really, the Duke boys were just ragging around in a slightly khaki, unwanted used car.
Completely.
A dinosaur as well. That's the other thing. Do you know, it's funny that show became so popular in that I imagine for a lot of people in a lot of parts of the US, two lads from Georgia ragging around in an old muscle car sort of symbolised a kind of, you know...
Sort of embarrassing past.
out-of-date mentality. And you just think, if you lived in New York or something, you'd just go, bloody rednecks, what are they up to now? But maybe that was part of the appeal, I don't know. It's hard to know, not being American and not living at that time.
And not being an adult at that time, yeah.
I mean,
same as Miami Vice, though. Maybe Miami Vice is just desperately embarrassing for people in Miami. I don't know.
I don't think people in Miami are embarrassed that easily. But
maybe not.
I sort of pointed out the other week that if Back to the Future was filmed now, Marty would go back to 1991. And that feels like it wasn't that long ago. It was like,
oh, gosh,
I mean, it was.
91.
But yeah, he goes back 30 years, doesn't he, from 1985 to 1955. And it's like,
right.
You know, I've got to do 88 miles an hour in, I don't know what the Back to the Future car would be these days. Maybe a...
Well, then again, there you go, see. So when Back to the Future came out, the DeLorean had been out of production for 3 years, tops.
Yeah.
So again, it wasn't a classic at all. In fact, it was a bit of an embarrassment.
Oh yeah, no, but that was totally because it was a joke car, because of the whole DeLorean cocaine scandal, and the factory had closed down. The whole thing had been pretty much agreed to be a disaster, and yeah, that was a comedy. It was a comedy choice, even to the fact that the door doesn't stay up properly, does it? And he bangs his head on it. It was all done for the laughs. That I get.
I think it should have, when they converted it to run on alternative things, it should have definitely just run on white powder, mysterious talc. I think, and Marty would have had to have raided a load of sports shops for I just think it would have been amazing. Of course, it was a kids' show, so no reference to like dirty disco powder. But,
because a true fact about Back to the Future is that Ford offered to pay a load of money to product place the Mustang into that movie, and the creator of the franchise said Doc Brown doesn't drive a fucking Mustang, was the quote attributed to him, and so they surrendered the cash, or they passed on the opportunity to have a load of cash in return for using a Mustang, and paid for their own DeLoreans because that's what they wanted. So that was a definite, very careful choice to have a sort of slightly laughable car at the time. But did you know
it worked?
The other thing I've learned from the wormhole of a Knight Rider historians channel is
gosh.
So GM were on board with the Trans Am featuring in that show, and gave the production, I think, 3 cars, and I think they maybe had a total of 4 cars, including like a sort of static one for doing interior shots. And that wasn't a lot to do loads of stunts with, even stuff like handbrake turns and shit. The car's getting stressed and dinked up, and the first series was done with 4 cars, and that was tough, and it meant they couldn't do really, really big stunts unless they were prepared to lose a car for a bit. And by the end of the series, apparently the cars were all held together with gaffer tape, basically, because they'd been put through the ringer. And they couldn't really ask GM for any more cars because the Trans Am in that shape had only just come out just before Knight Rider started filming. It was a really hot car at the time.
It was. Well, it was very futuristic.
Yeah. So that was a definite product placement of a car that was contemporary and cool. But then there was a train derailment in California caused by unseasonable rain, which made the track bed go soft, and a train came off the tracks, and it was carrying a bunch of Camaros and Firebirds from the GM factory in Van Nuys near Los Angeles.
Really?
And some of the cars were damaged, some of them weren't, but because they'd technically been in an accident, under Californian law, they could not be sold to customers. So GM sold a bunch of them to the studio for $1 a piece. And that meant suddenly they could dress them up, like kit.
Bloody hell.
And
I did not know that.
Same producers were making The Fall Guy. So The Fall Guy got a load of the cars off those trains as well for $1 a piece. And that's why, what's her name? The woman in Fall Guy, she had a white Firebird for a while that used to do stunts and stuff like that. That was a train wreck car as well. The only stipulation was that when filming was finished, they all had to be crushed.
Of course. But were they rich?
Well, it seems like they were, disappointingly. But yeah. No.
What I do remember about Knight Rider is the car was always incredibly highly polished.
Yeah.
And of course, being black, critical colour for any dings, dinks. So that could have given a few people a right old headache, making sure that kit was mint looking at all times.
Well, if you plunge headfirst down a Knight Rider wormhole, you'll discover that these people who forensically analyse each show do pick up on little dinks or bits of missing trim and use it to cross-ref which cars are used in which scenes. It's really mad. It's incredible.
I don't know if I can go there.
I mean,
I don't know if I can
depends.
go.
Do you have 3 or 4
back.
days free is my question.
No, I freaking don't.
Right, don't go there. Don't look at it. Just don't. Pretend I hadn't told you about this.
Okay, right.
But the reason I brought this up originally is because I was watching some of this Knight Rider stuff and I was thinking, what would happen to all of those shows, Knight Rider and the Dukes of Hazzard, and all of those kind of 80s action shows where cars did a lot of jumping and stuff, if they were made now? Because it would just be loads of airbags going off.
Oh, loads of undertrays.
Loads of undertrays, yeah.
There'd be wheel arch liners just flicking around everywhere. They would though. Have you ever done like a full compression yump? You sometimes can clatter the wheel arch and it removes itself.
Yeah.
The tyre will remove the wheel arch liner.
Yeah.
Because there's a sort of plastic rivets in, and they're only single use plastic jobs. They're rubbish.
Well, I think they're designed like that, are they? There's a sort of sacrificial element because it's better the wheel hits that than metalwork, and then you can replace it. But yeah, no, I've never had one come free. But I know what you mean. If you get full compression on a modern car, there's a lot of scrapey plastic sounds potentially happen, don't they? But
so what you're saying is the chances is every scene there'll be this beautiful jump and then it will cut to Michael Knight just filling the boot of his car with bits of plastic.
Gather up his undertray and wheel arch liners. He looks like a bad mime because his face has gone white with all the powder off the airbag that's gone off in his face. And then he gets back in kit.
It's definitely not cocaine.
No. And he gets back in kit and kit's gone into limp home mode because the ECU's detected airbag deployment.
Oh, a crash.
And then an ambulance turns up because the car's called for help without asking.
So what, he has to give chase at 32 miles an hour and that's it. Has to resort to firearms then, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So he's got a really white clown-like face and he's just firing. And also, I love the fact that in a lot of those 80s films, people were still regularly using revolvers.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the hell are you doing? It's a cowboy gun.
Well, but that's part of it, isn't it? I mean, Michael Knight was essentially a cowboy, wasn't he? He just sort of moseyed up, sorted out problems and then fucked off again. And so were the A-Team, for that matter. I think there's a lot of cowboy movie thinking in both of those shows. But
that's right.
Yeah, I like the idea as well.
Do-gooding vigilantes.
Michael Knight comes powering into an open area of desert and goes to do a massive power slide into a handbrake turn to a stop, but he's forgotten to turn the traction control off in Knight Rider 2021, and the car in fact just sort of embarrassingly kind of judders into a small bit of understeer and then stops.
That's what it would. It would be a safety understeer judder, wouldn't it? It's very, very unspectacular.
Yeah. Anyway, I was just wondering, that's the modern cars in 80s action series with lots of car stunts probably wouldn't work.
No, it really wouldn't, would it? Bloody hell. I mean, that dates us, the fact that we engaged so heavily with all of those.
We're just two old farts moaning about shit now. But I'm
sure a lot of listeners are going to say they're either into it or they're like, I just don't remember any of those shows. In which case, I will go straight to an anonymous DM that I had last night. Hey Jonny, enjoying the content, really enjoy Smith and Sniff. Now, there's a man in our village with a Zafira turbo with a hideously loud exhaust and dump valve. I found a standard exhaust on eBay for £75. I am planning an elaborate midnight raid on his vehicle. I think my 3 a.m. me and my friend will have it sorted. I've even checked his current exhaust system out, and it looks fairly new, which hopefully means the bolts won't be badly seized. But I might be able to pre-soak them in releasing oil a couple of nights before. I'm wondering. It's
fully
just great.
premeditated.
Oh, this is amazing. But I'm wondering what the police's view on this would be. My main question for you and Sniff is, have I completely lost my marbles, or have either of you ever done / heard of someone doing this before? Cheers, Anonymous. So he's put P.S. He woke my daughter up at 6:20 this morning on his way to work. I'm definitely doing this. That's what he said. I just want to say, right at the top of this, that messing with another person's vehicle is a crime. I don't know if he's really going to do it. I looked at his profile. He's got a nice car himself. He's a nice guy. Good car fanatic. But I think what he's saying is he's getting pissed off with a modified Zafira in his village.
Someone who modified a Zafira might need to catch a grip. The return to standard Vigilante is an enticing prospect, though. It's like when you remember my neighbour used to have that really faded Volvo, and you were determined that one night we were going to sneak out and machine polish it.
Oh, machine polish it with a really quiet. Yeah.
And I sort of think that's like, because how could he complain? It would just be like, what have you done to my car? We've made it nicer. I would absolutely, because it was red and it really shows it up. I think some Vigilante vehicle detailing, I think I could get on board with. Just people, that leave like bird mess on the roof for months, and it just burns a big like acne spot on the car. And like, no. Yeah. Or even, this would be ultra dodgy, but if you could unlock the car and get in, you could just do an amazing job getting all the dog hair out. When the vacuum cleaner crevice tool it puts those stripes on the carpet. Oh yeah.
Like stripes on your lawn where it looks super professional. That's a sign of a pro detail job. Yeah. And all that stuff. I don't know. It's a bit like that person a couple of years ago on, well, it must have been via Twitter, who mysteriously sent people Hot Wheels toys and Corgi models as gifts. Yes. Did you ever get one?
I did. I got a little model of my Defender.
Yeah, and I got a model too, and I still don't know.
What did you get?
I'm trying to remember. I think I got an AMC Pacer. And I still don't know how did they find my address? I mean, it's slightly creepy,
it is a bit
but at the
same time, it was very thoughtful. And what was he called? The die-cast...
Yeah, what was he? It was like a die-cast donut.
That's it, yeah,
was it the die-cast donut?
Yeah.
And I loved the idea of it, and because ultimately it was done because of kindness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Kindness is still kindness, even if there's a creepy side to it. I think. I don't know. I would do it on a case by case basis, but in this case, it was nice. It was thoughtful. But yes, now the man who might want to switch his neighbour's Zafira back to a standard exhaust system, I think, and I'm not a lawyer or a policeman, but I think you would have to leave the aftermarket exhaust somewhere on this person's property. You couldn't take it away because that would be stealing. That's where I see the crime lying.
But he wouldn't want to steal the exhaust. No. I think what he would do is I would wrap it in bubble pack and put it next to the car. Yeah. Or on the person, because if he knows where the person lives, he put it on.
Couldn't he?
Yeah, put it on their doorstep. Make sure you don't lose any of the fasteners. Yeah. You haven't rinsed any of those because you've pre-soaked them in WD-40. And and he's got a brand new exhaust system, a standard exhaust system. It's just a polite way of going, listen.
Yeah.
I get it. You love the pop bang thing. You like the drain pipe exhaust, but you know what? It's just pissing a few of us off. And it's not like an event, it's not like a Ferrari, is it? It's not a 488.
No, do you say it's a GSI?
It's a Zafira Turbo, so I'm going to say it would be a VXR.
Ah, yes.
Probably a Zafira VXR, wouldn't it be? Or even a GSI. Yeah, pre-VXR was GSI, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's a GSI in the town that I live in, a blue one, and that's seen some heavy mods. I'd say there's at least 80 louvers on the front of the car. At least there's a lot of louvers.
Blind.
Oh yeah, honestly, it just looks like someone's just chiselled and lifted all of the body panels. Just chisel in, lift, chisel in, lift, chisel in, lift. There's so many breathing holes. That car gets more cold air. I'm surprised it doesn't take off. It's got so much air going in and it just starts to wheelie.
Sounds drafty.
It's incredible.
So I think that all right, put it this way. You're that bloke with a Zafira. You come out, you start the car, you go, hang on a minute, something's wrong here. You give it a couple of blips. It's very quiet. You look underneath it. You realise what's happened. And then you go down the side of your house, and there, carefully wrapped in bubble pack, is your old exhaust with all the fixings. You ring the police. What do you say?
Yeah.
Someone's put a different exhaust on my car. They've stolen your exhaust, sir. No, they've not stolen it. It's just been put down the side of my house because there's a new... So what's been stolen? Well, nothing. So what's been done? They've put a different exhaust on your car. It sort of feels like there's no crime there. Like, because trespass isn't a crime, is it? It's a civil matter.
That's right. And I've trespassed making a video before, but I had to be very, very clear that that's what I was doing.
So they've trespassed, but that's a civil matter. It's up to the guy to find out who's been on his property and go after them. But what else is the crime of tampering? I don't know.
It is sort of I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to tamper with my property, because I mean, it'd be a bit like someone. Imagine if it's sort of friendly tampering. So someone round here's got a shabby-looking house. It would be in the middle of the night. You gently brush off the ivy and the dirt from their pebble dash, and you paint their house for them. I mean, with night vision goggles on. I mean, on the one hand, it's dead creepy. On the other hand, it's a really nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, your house looks better. I mean, look, I quite like the idea of being a vigilante vehicle detailer.
Yeah.
Because that's saying, I don't like the state of your car. You need to look after your car better. Imagine if you went one step further. Imagine if we had this sponsored so that we could actually put new tyres on their car at night, because we realised one of them's just inexcusably bald and they've been driving around at 8 psi for the last 3 months.
Well, I mean, I'd settle for just prowling the streets, pumping up people's tyres to the correct pressure.
Yeah.
Fuck me, sometimes you see some soggy tyres.
Oh, terrible stuff.
And you think,
yeah.
Really?
And you just leave a little slip of folded paper under the windscreen, and it just details what you've done. So, brand new set of Continentals, both up to 32 psi. I've done your tracking, did some laser tracking. I keep it with me in the van. We've done a clay bar. We've done full protection.
Vigilante vehicle detailing.
Yeah, I noticed piece of trim was not quite fitting properly, so I put some 3M tape on that. That'll never come off. Oh, one of your number plates was inexcusably cloudy and it looks like a glass eye, so we've taken that off. We've put a brand new one on for you.
I feel there's a TV show in here somewhere, but I'd quite like it if it was sort of a dramatisation, like the A-Team, where we just went round in a van, which we wouldn't be able to jump because it would have airbags. But if we got a Transit, you could heel and tow it. And we just prowl around at night in a black Transit, really murdered out Transit.
I think it looks too
crimey.
It looks kidnappy. Yeah. I think we'd have to go for something a little bit more JDM. Toyota Hiace.
Okay.
Toyota, or no, what's those? Oh, I know, a Suzuki Carry. I quite like Suzuki Carries because they're 1.3. I think they're 16 valve rear wheel drive. So let's do a Suzuki Carry.
I'm not on board with this. It's too small for all of the stuff that you're going to need.
No, it's not. We keep it covert.
I suppose it's good for sneaking. Like if someone busts us, we can leap into the Suzuki Carry and drive off down an alley or something. But
actually, no, we go EV. Nissan ENV 200.
Because then we can sneak about.
Because then we sneak around like naughty cats, and we've got all of the gear. Yeah, I'm going to have to find a really, really... those machine polishers, they can make a bit of noise. So what I would do, I'd have to have a fleece cloak that I wrap around myself.
Well, hang on. What about like a sort of pop-up bell tent type thing, but it's fleece-lined and it envelops the whole car?
One of those... What, like a crime scene tent?
Yes.
Where there's always a dead body and you just see a white tent in the middle of a field?
Yeah, but lined with fleece or egg boxes or something. I don't know. It might get a bit hot. In
that
the
we
summer.
should do that. So if I need to do anything involving a bit of noise, we do that. I think it'd be brilliant.
But the thing is, I
feel like we need to get a detailing company on board.
Yeah,
with this.
I was going to say, what if we make a complete horse's cock of actually doing the work and make their car in some way worse?
Well, that's like when people sue burglars for smashing their window to try and break in, and the burglar sues them because they cut their wrist on glass from breaking into their house.
It's a weird area, isn't it? But what I'd say is, I think
we don't want any of that shizzle.
I think we're onto something somewhere. I just can't think. But I was thinking maybe your machine polisher, because if I can't get my fleece-lined bell tent up in time, you've had your machine polishing attachment thing. You've had your machine polisher modified by a specialist. You know the way that assassins would have a heavily silenced gun.
It'd be a brushless motor.
You've got a heavily silenced machine polisher.
Yeah, it'd be a cordless, brushless motor that doesn't actually turn very quickly, so it'd be slower turning, so it would take slightly longer, but it would be quieter.
I wonder if this might not be better done not necessarily at night when they're asleep, because we might wake them, but perhaps when they've been distracted, like we get them tickets to a really long film at the cinema, and so we've got
Oh, okay, so a bit like Chip Foose on Overhauling. So you get your sister to say, "Oh, I'll take your car for a service," and she takes it to a faux shonky garage where the car mysteriously disappears for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Is it one of them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do like the covert aspect and the vigilante aspect, obviously. So, yeah, we'll keep workshopping this one. I'm sure we'll get somewhere in the end. But in the meantime, that guy with the exhaust, I mean, as I said, I'm not a lawyer or a policeman, so I would say go for it. But don't take the old exhaust away, because that's stealing.
No, don't take the old bits away. I think that's...
this happened to... my mate Zog, off the Gareth Jones on Speed podcast. He had an MG Midget that was stolen from his street
recently
when he lived in this is years ago when he lived in Golders Green. This MG was nicked, and then a few weeks, months maybe later, he was walking down another street not that far away, and he saw it parked at the curb.
What?
And so he just took it back. He got the keys and he took it back, but then he discovered that whoever nicked it had replaced the radiator, which needed doing, and he was in this quandary of, am I now technically stealing? Although they stole from me, I've now stolen from them, because this is, technically speaking,
they've
their
added
radiator.
Parts.
Yeah. And it had a cushion on the driver's seat, which wasn't there when he drove it. So he sort of nicked that as well. But it's a weird legal grey area, I would say.
Did he? And he kept it for forever after that, as in... It didn't get nicked again. It wasn't like every week.
Like a cat and mouse.
Is it like was it a child custody war where it's like, no, I've got him. No, I'm having him. No, I said I was having him this weekend. So hang on, you're a fucking thief. Can you stop doing this? You're a bloody thief.
Stop spoiling the midget when you've got him for the weekend.
And it's like, right, that's it. I'm stealing it off you, and I'm having a bare metal repaint. That's it. And it's like, but that's going to cost you $6,000. Yeah, I know, and I don't care. It's not even my car, and I'm going to do it.
I don't know. I can't remember how this ended. I think he just kept it and that was it, and it was his car, and the other person didn't bother taking it back, which is odd, because you would think they know where they got it from and they know it now contains their radiator, but I suppose they realised the jigger was up. I don't know.
I think in the last year or so we all realised that giving back and helping one another, being kind, is a good thing to do. Maybe that's the way we could show our endless kindness, by just doing mysterious vigilante improvements on vehicles. Yeah. We could we walk round, we look at a car, we check that it's shonky, we run the plate through the MOT checks list on the DVLA, and we go, look, they've had an advisory on the offside ball joint for 2 years running. They obviously can't be bothered to do it, so let's just do it tonight. Let's put a new ball joint on it.
We'd have to be certain this person wasn't a prick, though.
Yeah, it's a shame if you did a really good job on a car and you found out that they were a complete flute. Yeah, that would be bad.
We'll have to do a bit of background research. The thing I was saying about Zog, it just reminded me of an email we've had from a listener called Phil Webb, who sent this story in. I'll just read this out really quickly. The year was 1999. We were at Aylesbury College at the time. My mate Adam had an 89 G-registered Mini 30 edition. We went to Milton Keynes to get some CDs, etc. That dates it immediately. Who
I love that.
On a specific
I had a Mini 30
trip to buy CDs. What heady times they were.
So that was 89, right?
Yeah.
Mini 30, yeah.
On returning to the car in the multi-storey car park, I threw the bag of stuff we'd bought on the back seat. We drove out and headed into the concrete and roundabout jungle. Adam, who was driving, said, "Mate, where's that album by Stellantis we've just bought now? I don't believe that, Phil. You've added that detail in." I reached the back seat and picked the bag up. Then I noticed a single high-heel shoe tucked under his seat and a lady's suit jacket on the floor next to it. I said, "Mate, why is there a high-heeled shoe and woman's jacket in your car?" He was single at the time, so I started thinking, clearly he's no longer single. Adam said, "What are you on about?" as I went to put the CD in the radio, which was now a Pioneer and not the Alpine I'd helped him fit a few weeks earlier. The penny started to drop. We pulled over. The car was pretty identical, apart from this one had a big exhaust mounted to one side and his was centrally mounted. And yet his key had not only got us into the car, it had also started it. Knowing that we were now driving someone else's car, we had to get it back to the car park quickly. On returning to the car park, the space where we'd taken it was filled, as was the whole floor. So it was decided that we'd find his car, which turned out to be 2 floors up, and swap. We'd like to say sorry to the lady who, on a June day in 1999, maybe reported her car stolen, only for the police to possibly find it just 2 floors up. Also, her stereo choice was not great. Adam's Alpine was far superior.
My gosh.
That's good, isn't it?
That is brilliant. I mean,
Thank you, Phil.
I disagree on the stereo front. I've got to say, I was always a Pioneer man. But it depends on the individual unit.
Yeah. Let's not get bogged down.
But bloody hell, that's amazing. But also going that fast, I think I would know my car quicker than that.
Yeah, I think I would, but I don't know. Maybe they would just...
they were preoccupied. They bought CDs and everything.
I mean,
hadn't they?
I'm going to dock Phil a point for not telling us what CDs they'd actually bought, because I feel like that's in some way quite an important detail. But anyway, otherwise, an excellent story, Phil. Thank you ever so much for emailing in. And on that note, if anyone else has got anything they want to share with us, smithandsniff@gmail.com. And
indeed,
next week we're going to be answering questions from our Patreons. Put out a thing last week saying ask us anything. So if you're one of our Patreons, we will be answering those questions that you have put for us, and there's some really excellent ones have been coming in. We will answer those next episode, so a week today that will come out.
An advance warning: we might get sidetracked in between questions.
Yes, that might well happen.
I suppose we should say thank you to everybody, Patreon or not, for listening.
Indeed, thank you ever so much for listening.
Thanks for all the comments, and
if you are feeling generous, we do have a Patreon, because we keep mentioning it at the moment. Patreon.com/Smith and Sniff, if you want to have a look at that. We should probably try and get this thing back to the terminal.
We should probably, I know, do a Michael Knight 2021 car handbrake turn with all of the safety aids on.
Oh, it's understeering.
I can just imagine the engine just bogging. Yeah. It's when people who drive a manual car who have forgotten that they're normally in an auto, and they've left it in 4th gear, and they come to a really juddering stop.
Even engine management eventually just goes, "Oh, for fuck's sake, I can't take all this." Anyway, right then. So I have 3 things to tell you before we end. 1, Jonny has a solo YouTube channel. It's called The Late Break Show, full of many excellent things, including him driving a Spiker, which is well worth a watch. 2, I've got various books out. One of them is called Medium-Sized Book of Boring Car Trivia by Sniff Petrol, available exclusively on Amazon as an ebook or a paperback. And 3, talking as we were about 80s American action comedy drama shows, you may remember the start of The A-Team, which said in 1972 a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. One of those things is not true.
What?
Not all of the A-Team were still wanted by the government. Murdoch had been sectioned for apparently post-traumatic stress disorder after a helicopter crash, and as such he was not still wanted for the same crimes as the
yeah. Oh, Rich, I do love your nuggets of trivia, because Howling Mad Murdoch was always my favourite.
Yeah. B.A. Baracus, do you know what the B.A. stood for?
Bad attitude.
Well, yes, but that was actually what he said it stood for, but his real first
Brother
name was
Abbott?
Bosco.
Was it?
The BA actually stood for Bosco Albert Baracus.
Wow.
But then he became BA and then said it stood for bad attitude, but yes, Bosco.
But then became Mr. T. I was always confused why some people called him Mr. T. It's like, but hang on, his name's B.A. Baracus. There's no T in any of that. How's that all come apart? I didn't understand.
I remember as a kid, like sort of probably about 7 years old, seeing on a newsstand a tabloid paper that had a big headline that said Mrs. T talks tough or something, obviously talking about the then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. But I didn't realise they called the Prime Minister Mrs. T around then, and I was like, oh wow, Mrs. T, God, is this some kind of A-Team spin-off that's going to happen? And I was really excited by it.
Mrs. T! Can you imagine Margaret Thatcher having a relationship with B.A. Baracus?
It's a quintessential odd couple.
Oh God, that would be so amazing.
Margaret, what you doing in the Falklands?
I mean, there's so much material there. I'm not getting on no aeroplane, fool. He would just smash his way into the House of Commons and point at her with his feathery bracelet on.
Yeah, I could see it now.
This is so stupid. This is the stupidest ending to every one of our podcasts. And we've done some stupid endings.
Anyway, well, that's that. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week for answering some Patreon's questions. Until then,
goodbye.